So you're going to start a podcast, but do you know what format you're going to use? Something you didn't think about. Don't worry, I'm going to talk about the top 4 formats you can choose from so you can start your podcast. Hey, it's Jennifer Lee, and I have over 10 years of experience in the broadcasting world. I was a radio DJ, I've worked in the helicopter as a traffic helicopter reporter, and in the last year, I started my own podcast, and I'm also currently working with the Home Builders Association of Vancouver on their podcast, Measure Twice, Cut Once. I co-host it with the lovely Michael Friedman, and I edit it as well. I want to be able to help you create your own podcasts. So all you need to do is take a look at what I do on my website, podcastconsulting.ca, and follow along in these videos. Please subscribe at the button below, and then of course, hit the bell for more notifications. So let's get started. Format number 1, the interview podcast. My favorite. This was my favorite because I'm a radio DJ at heart. I was one for quite a few years, and I loved interviewing bands. I got to interview rock bands, local celebrities, prominent figures. It was awesome. So I love having a conversation. And of course, my 2 podcasts that I'm involved in right now are both interview podcasts. The one that I do with the Home Builders Association Vancouver, my co-host and I interview people in the construction industry. And I love that because I love seeing what makes people tick. I love learning their story. I want to know why this topic that we're talking about is important to them. So that is why I like the interview podcast. It does have some cons. So interviews are not easy. They take a long time to kind of get that feeling for. And it's also not easy to be a great interviewer. Like I said, it takes a long time to learn that craft. So it might not be the easiest one to start with. A lot of people think that you just kind of get some guests and you roll off a topic, but you really have to be the leader when you are the interviewer. Of course, you've got to do an introduction of your guest, and then you've got to be able to keep the conversation going. So it can be hard at times, but I also think this is a great podcast format to do. Also, one more thing about the interview process is you're going to have to find guests. And sometimes getting consistent guests on your topic is also a little bit difficult. But of course, in future videos, we can go over that. And in another video, we're going to go over on how to interview like a pro. Format number 2, the solo podcast, which is also great. I actually think all of these are great, really. You can't go wrong with any type of format for your podcast. You just have to find the right one that works for you. The solo podcast is great because if you are an expert at something, you can teach us and you can talk about a whole topic by yourself and we can learn something from you. With this one, though, you want to make sure you are adding value and you're engaging enough by yourself that people are going to want to be able to listen to the podcast. And also, you want to make sure that you're going to be able to talk for a long period of time. Yes, you can do a 15-minute podcast, maybe a bit shorter. It just depends on your topic. Maybe you don't need to say a lot, but you want to be able to keep that conversation going and you want it to be good. And you don't want to keep it going for the sake of going. You want to be able to know when you've given enough gold to your listeners and that you're able to end your podcast and your episode is great and it can stand alone and people want to listen to it. But again, we'll go over more about how to create your topic in future videos. Format number 3, podcasting with a co-host. Another format that I love because back in my radio days, I used to fill in as a morning show co-host and I just love bouncing ideas off with someone and just having somebody else to chat with. If you can't tell, I love chatting. So this is great. And you can also marry this with the interview podcast. So you can have a co-host, you guys can have great topics that you talk about. And then once in a while, you can have special guests on to further the conversation. So there's so much you can do with this one. Also love this type of podcast because like I said, if there's like a topic that the two of you love, each of you can have your own opinion as well and make that topic much more richer. So I just love the co-host format for podcasting because it can be so good. But that being said, of course, there's a downside too. You have to be able to find a co-host that you have chemistry with. It's a real thing. I didn't always have chemistry with everybody that I talked on the radio with. And you want to be able to find that person that you're engaging enough with, that people are going to be able to listen to the two of you and find value from the topics that you're talking about. So it's super important that you find that right co-host for yourself. And the last one, podcast format number 4. The theater podcast. This one is great, especially during COVID, because you can basically be socially distanced with your theater castmates because you could be doing this all from your own computer because there are remote softwares out there. So I love the theater podcast because I also love telling stories. Theater was my first love before broadcasting. And I just think this is a great way to tell your story with a bunch of friends. And right now, when we don't have theater, I think this is a great way to be able to showcase your theater talents by doing a theater podcast. So great option all around. So love it. Okay, so that was the 4 top formats that you could be choosing from to start your podcast. Like I said, there's a few others that I will talk about in other videos, but these are a great start for you. One of these 4 will definitely work, and all you need to do is choose which one that you will like doing and that you can see longevity, because that's the thing. You want to choose a format that you can keep consistent and you want to be able to do. And some of the other formats that I talked about, like the theater one, or sometimes interview, or even co-hosting, you can have multiple people. So it just depends how much equipment you're going to want to have. But again, we can discuss that all in another video. I don't want to keep sounding like I'm being repetitive, but I just want to help you make this an easy process. So I plan on doing a lot of different videos to help you when starting your podcast. Okay, so enough for now. I just filled your head with a lot of information. I'm going to head out of here, but before we do, please subscribe to the button below and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss new content. And that's all I'm going to say, and have a great day. Bye.